up next, we got to talk about something Trump just said that's raising some eyebrows, to say the very least. Okay, because there's been this whole controversy about an immigrant who was sent into El Salvador, even though he was deported. He was allowed to be deported, but there was a court order saying he wasn't supposed to go to El Salvador, but he was sent there anyway. There's been this whole brouhaha over, can the Trump administration get him back and what have you? And that's a whole debate. But Trump just said something that's an escalation beyond that. He seriously is floating the idea of sending American citizens who commit crimes to foreign jails in El Salvador. Take a listen to this clip.
You mentioned that you're open to deporting individuals that aren't foreign aliens but are criminals to El Salvador. Does that include potentially U.S. citizens, fully naturalized Americans?
If they're criminals and if they hit people with baseball bats over their head that happen to be 90 years old, and if they rape 87-year-old women in Coney Island, Brooklyn, yeah, that includes them. What do you think? There's a special category of person? They're as bad as anybody that comes in. We have bad ones too, and I'm all for it because we can do things with the president for less money and have great security. And we have a huge prison population. We have a huge number of prisons, and then we have the private prisons, and some are operated well, I guess, and some aren't. But he does a great job with that. We have others that we're negotiating with too. But no, if it's a homegrown criminal, I have no problem. Now, we're studying the laws right now. Pam is studying. If we can do that, that's good. And I'm talking about violent people. I'm talking about really bad people. Really bad people. Every bit as bad as the ones coming in.
Yeah, that's insane and probably illegal and unconstitutional because American citizens can be imprisoned if they commit serious crimes and absolutely should be, but they can't be sent to foreign countries and they can't be sent to basically torture dungeons. Like these jails, I'll get into some details in a moment, but these jails in El Salvador that we're talking about are horrific. And the Eighth Amendment of the Constitution very clearly says you can't subject people to cruel and unusual punishment. So what Trump's floating here is on its face illegal and unconstitutional. And so it's pretty disturbing to see him just casually musing about it. And it's another example of how he's taking an issue that should be a winning issue for him, deporting illegal immigrants who commit crimes or are a threat to society, and taking it too far, giving ammunition to his critics and undercutting what he was elected to do. I found myself, of all people, agreeing with the left-wing co-founder of the Young Turks, Cenk Uygur, when he wrote, "Why doesn't he just deport undocumented criminals? That would be very popular. Why does he have to try something illegal or unconstitutional? Why would you even consider sending U.S. citizens to a foreign prison?" It's like he's trying to find ways to chip away at the Constitution. I pointed this out on Twitter, that I agreed with this, and that to me, it's obviously crazy to send American citizens to foreign prisons. Like, we have prisons here for a reason that they can go to. And the conditions, let me just remind you of this prison that we're talking about in El Salvador, are horrific. Something that I don't care what people commit, what crime they commit. We don't literally torture people for committing crimes, so you can't do that, not under our Eighth Amendment to our Constitution. Reading here from the Daily Mail about this El Salvador prison we're all talking about, it is, quote, a notorious prison where inmates are subjected to extremely harsh treatment and live in overcrowded cells without basic essentials. Inmates are herded into cold, sparse cells with 80 men crammed into each, with no sheets, pillows, or even mattresses, just hard steel bed frames. They have nothing to occupy them, such as TV or books, and aren't even allowed to speak to each other. There are only 2 toilets, and lights are on around the clock. Every pavilion also has its own windowless cell where unruly prisoners are sent. The same meal is served every day and has to be eaten by hand as utensils aren't allowed. Phone calls and visitors, even family and lawyers, are banned. Inmates spend 23.5 hours locked in their overcrowded cells with just 30 minutes to stretch, chained in the middle of the hallway. Yeah, so the idea that we would ever send an American citizen to a foreign prison like that, no matter what heinous crime they commit, is insane and obviously unconstitutional. So while he hasn't done it yet, the idea that Trump's even floating it isn't good. It's very bad. And even if you agree with Trump on immigration broadly, you voted for him, you support him, it's okay to think sometimes he goes too far, or sometimes he says something he shouldn't, or nobody is 100% correct 100% of the time. Okay, so even if you're a Trump supporter, I would hope you could agree with me that, like, hey, that is too far. But I was attacked on Twitter by some very loyal Trump Republicans for simply stating this, to me, obvious legal and moral point. The MAGA radio host Kurt Schlichter tweeted at me, "A tough, no-nonsense prison that has saved thousands of innocent Salvadorian lives is a dystopian torture hellhole. Brad Polumbo would rather innocent people be raped and murdered en masse than have killers in a jail he finds aesthetically displeasing. I prefer the criminals be locked up. It's a stark policy choice, and I appreciate him allowing voters to choose one or the other path." So I fear he may have missed the entire point of what I said, and tribalism and partisanship may have rotted his brain and eroded his reading comprehension skills. What I said was that American citizens who commit serious crimes should be put in American prisons in America. I did not say anyone who sexually assaults or murders people should be released and open to the streets. You hallucinated that. And it is so dishonest to see, after the description I just read of this prison, that my issue with is just that it's aesthetically displeasing. That's a tough, no nonsense. No, it's a torture chamber intended for terrorists in El Salvador. If you want to argue Americans should be sent to dystopian foreign prisons where they will be tortured, you may argue that, but don't gaslight me about what it is that we're talking about and what it is I did or didn't say. I worry, honestly, that with this immigration issue, Trump and Republicans are overplaying their hand. They're going too far in taking what should be and was a winning issue and turning it into something incredibly controversial and divisive and polarizing. But hey, what do I know? I'm just somebody who apparently wants violent criminals released and celebrated in society or something. Let me know what you think in the comments, guys.